بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I hope everybody is doing great today, inshallah. So let's get started right away. As usual, we'll start off with the questions of that I left you, the homework questions which I had left you with last week. The first question related to the Aqeedah: how does a Muslim stay on the straight path? And ideally, all of us should know the answer to this because we all, inshallah, know how to stay on the straight path. Yes? In the middle? Front? In the middle? Front? Yes? Very good. So following the teachings of the Quran, which is done by following the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We mentioned last week the concept of the straight path, as-sirat al-mustaqim. We mentioned that this is something that is found in the Quran, found even in Surah Al-Fatiha. There is only one path that leads to Jannah. And we defined the concept of Sharia. This is exactly what Sharia is. Sharia is like a Google Maps that will lead you to Jannah, right? It tells you go turn left, turn right, go make a U-turn, whatever, right? It leads you to Jannah. There's only one way to get there, and this is through the straight path. How do I go on the straight path? By following the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why is it dangerous to rely on the internet, and especially on things like Google, and nowadays with the AI and ChatGPT and all of this fancy stuff that's coming out? Why is this dangerous? Yes? So, okay, you're kind of right. Okay, I'll just give it to you so that just we can move on. Basically, not everything that you will find on Google and on ChatGPT is correct information. Okay, and I mentioned this in great detail last week, and the recording of last lecture is there if you want to see the full explanation. But many of us, unfortunately, we fall into this trap that whenever we're not sure about something regarding Islam, is this thing halal or haram? And then last week I gave an example of music. You would go on Google, is music halal or haram? And then you would scroll through the search results, and then you would find a website that just has the word Islam in it, and you're like, okay, seems legit. You just go on it, and then you find a comment by music lover 123 saying, oh yeah, music is halal, and you're like, oh, khalas, bro, music is halal. This is not the correct way for you to get and learn your Islam. Okay. The scholars didn't go to university for 4 or 5 up to 10 years even studying Islam just so for you to go on Google and to come up with an answer in less than 5 seconds. It doesn't work this way. Not everything on Google is correct, and in fact, many enemies of Islam, they purposely create websites, and there are known websites. They purposely create websites. They make it look Muslim. They put contents in it that appear to be Islamic, but in reality, they are feeding false information so that innocent and / ignorant people fall trapped to these kind of websites. So this is why we have to be very careful when it comes to the internet. Similarly, ChatGPT. ChatGPT, once again, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's just to phrase it very simply. No, can we please sit in the back, please? The front row is full. Please go to the back. ChatGPT, if you can think about it like a robot, okay? It's just a robot that it appears to be very, very smart. Whenever you ask it anything, it, mashallah, answers a whole entire essay worth of answers, and it explains to you everything. But I explained to you last week, as someone who actually works in the tech field, in the IT field, the ChatGPT, you would actually be surprised, is not actually as smart as you think. It simply works with the information that it has. And if it doesn't know the answer to something, it doesn't tell you, I don't know. It will try to make an answer, and trust me, it's going to sound very convincing. And I mentioned last week, I don't know if anyone tried it. If you can go home, go on ChatGPT, and ask it, who is this person? Has anyone tried it? Did it give you an answer? And it tells you, I remember I put in my name, like, who is Omar Al Bastami? And it told me, Omar Al Bastami, he's this guy who lived in the 1500s. He was an author, and he wrote several books, and he did this and that. I'm like, oh, mashallah, didn't know I did all of this stuff. So this is ChatGPT. So if this is the answers that it's giving, what do you think now when you start to ask it Islamic questions? It's not very reliable. So therefore, we do not rely on ChatGPT and Google or any kind of internet technologies for answers. Rather, you go and rely on scholars, people who've actually studied Islam. Why should a person still put an effort to earn their provision even though it is pre-written? Yes? So very good. Basically, we explained this over the past couple of weeks through different hadith. But while, yes, we do understand that everything is pre-written, Allah Azza wa Jal knows everything. Allah Azza wa Jal knows how much money I'm going to earn. Allah Azza wa Jal knows how long I'm going to live. Allah Azza wa Jal knows whether I will enter Jannah or Jahannam. But does that mean that I just sit back and I just let everything happen? So when it comes to provision, for example, when it comes to money, do you expect to just sit on your couch and be like, okay, Allah Azza wa Jal wrote how much money I'm going to earn, and it's just going to come to me in a bag of money with wings falling right in front of me? It doesn't work that way. We wish that it does. That way, our life would have been so much easier. But it doesn't work that way. You have to work. You have to put in the effort. You have to basically put an effort through the means. And the Arabic word for this is the asbab. Using the means and the asbab and basically the different ways in order for you to reach your provision. So, for example, if a person wants to get and receive the provision that Allah Azza wa Jalla wrote for him, they need to get off the couch and they need to get a job. Okay? And then this is when Allah Azza wa Jalla opens doors, closes doors, makes it easy for people. But the point is, you have to work for it. And then it will come to you, inshallah. Okay? Um, if a person is a very pious and a kind person and they do all types of good deeds, is this person guaranteed Jannah? And you have to explain your answer. Yes? So that's correct. That's a correct answer. But last week we discussed nobody can ever guarantee Jannah or Jahannam. And this is why, as Muslims, none of us should ever feel safe. None of us should ever get the feeling that, oh, Alhamdulillah, I'm doing so much good. I'm praying all my salahs. I'm doing everything. Alhamdulillah, I'm surely, definitely going to enter Jannah. Nobody has the guarantee that they will enter Jannah. And that should always make us feel like we need to do more. Um, and rather, we mentioned last week that actions are judged by their final deeds. Sorry, no, it's not the way around. Deeds are judged by their final actions. Deeds are judged by their final actions. So a person, the hadith last week we mentioned, a person can spend their entire life doing the actions of the people of Jannah. Can you imagine someone living 80, 90, 100 years and they spend 99 years worshipping Allah, and only in the last year they start to not do their prayers and commit acts of kufr and whatnot? If they conclude their life like this, then this is a person who will end up in Jahannam. And vice versa as well. Someone who spent their entire lifetime committing crimes and sins, but then in the last week of their life, they repent back to Allah, they become sincere Muslims, and they start praying and making istighfar and tawbah and whatnot. This is a person of Jannah. So therefore, we cannot ever look at someone, whether it is a sheikh or whether it is a criminal, and judge the sheikh that, oh, this guy will surely definitely enter Jannah, and judge the criminal and be like, this guy is surely definitely going to enter Jahannam. You do not know. You don't know what will happen in the future. You don't know what deeds these people will do. So therefore, nobody can ever guarantee Jannah or Jahannam. However, a Muslim, just to kind of clear up a misconception, a Muslim can be hopeful. I have hope that, because of all the good deeds I'm doing, I have hope because of all the prayers and the Quran and the donations and all the good that I'm doing, that Allah Azza wa Jal will give me a righteous ending. That I have hope that Allah will make me among the people of Jannah. We hope that inshallah all of us here are of the people of Jannah. What are the conditions that allow a person to wipe on the khuff? Girls, I think now. Yes? Uh-huh. Very good. And time limit. Very good. So we mentioned last week in fiqh the concept of wiping on the khuff, not wiping on the socks. Okay, that's something we're going to talk about today. The khuff. We mentioned the khuff is like a leather sock. Remember? And I showed the picture last week. It's a leather sock that you people wear, and it covers up to the ankles. Okay, and there are rulings and certain conditions. If they are met, it allows a person to wipe on the khuff instead of washing their feet when it comes to making wudu. So, what are the conditions for me to be able to wipe on the khuff? Number one, before I wear my khuff, I have to be in a state of wudu. I have to be in a state of tahara. I can't just not have wudu and wear my khuff and start wiping on it. It doesn't work that way. Secondly, the khuff itself, this is obvious, it must not have any najasa on it. If the khuff has najasa on it, it must be taken off, it must be cleaned from the najasa. Number three, I must not be in a state of major hadath. What is major hadath? We'll discuss that inshallah next week. But I must not be in a state of major hadath. Otherwise, I don't have this permission to wipe on the khuff. I must take off my khuff. And lastly, we said that we have to be within the time limit. So when someone wears the khuff, they don't just have an infinite time windows that they can wipe the khuff. We mentioned that if a person is a non-traveler, how long do they have? 1 day. 1 day, 1 night, which is basically 24 hours. And for a traveler, 3 days, 3 nights, or basically 72 hours. Okay? So let's say a person makes wudu, and then they wear their khuff. And then after some time, they fall asleep, and they fall into a deep sleep, okay? And then they wake up, and now they want to make wudu. Are they allowed to wipe on the khuff? Yes. Very good. Very good. Yes, they can. Because let's go through the 4 conditions. We said he has to put on the khuff in a state of wudu. Did he put on the khuff in a state of wudu? Yes, so the first condition is met. The second condition, the khuff must not have any najasa. I mean, the question doesn't really mention it, but it just assumes it. Okay, so we'll just say the khuff doesn't have any najasa in it. The third condition, the person must not be in a state of major hadath. Deep sleep, is it a minor or major hadath? Minor. Remember that we mentioned last week or in a couple weeks before the things which invalidate the wudu, you know, releasing air or anything that leaves the front or the back passage, deep sleep, eating camel meat, these things, remember the points we mentioned? These are all minor hadath. So deep sleep is a minor hadath. And lastly, we're assuming again he is within the time limit. Therefore, this person is allowed to wipe on the khuff when they go and make wudu, assuming, by the way, that they did not take off their khuff. What happens if they take off the khuff? We will talk about that today. So this guy is sleeping with the khuff on. Okay, so that's another important point. We're going to talk about that today. Question? We're going to talk about that today. So just wait till we explain that part, inshallah. Give an example of how the Quraysh would insult the Quran. What would they do? The girls, yeah. Very good. So they would accuse it of being magic, poetry, asatir al-awwalin, like ancient fairy tales, basically. They would say that it's been written by a human being. And also when it gets recited out loud, they would try to drown out the Quran. When Quraysh tried to negotiate with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which surah did Allah Azza wa Jal reveal? Someone other than him? Come on, boys. Okay, someone other than these 2 people who already answered? None of you guys know? Yes, Muhammad. Surah Al-Kafirun. Surah Al-Kafirun. Remember, we mentioned that the Quraysh, they came to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and they made an offer to him. And they said, why don't you worship our gods and we will worship your God? And they understood it like this is a win-win. Because if our gods are true, then you're worshipping our gods, therefore you'll enter Jannah. And if your God is true and our gods are false, well, we're worshipping your God, therefore we will also enter Jannah. Therefore, it's a win-win. We just worship each other's gods and we will all enter Jannah. And then Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla revealed this down. Any questions before we move on? Okay, let's move on. So we are still continuing in Aqeedah the concept of how do we protect ourselves from deviation. So we mentioned previously a whole list of reasons, of common reasons, what causes people to stray away from Islam. So now naturally we have to talk about the cure. How do we protect ourselves in a time when it is honestly so easy for people to deviate away from the teachings of Islam? Last week we already mentioned a few points, sticking to the Quran and the Sunnah. We mentioned seeking out knowledge from the proper sources. We mentioned other things. So today we'll continue. We also mentioned that of the issues that causes people to deviate away from the religion is to go to extremes in their religion. So what's the cure to this? Well, you have to be practicing Islam in moderation. A moderate belief is the best kind of belief. So to protect ourselves and to protect our deen, we must avoid going to extremes in the religion. And Allah Azza wa Jal reminds us as we read the Quran that we should not fall into the same error that the previous nations fell. Allah Azza wa Jal spoke in the Quran several times, in fact, and He said, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ لَا تَغْلُوا فِي دِينِكُمْ. O people of the book, Allah is talking about the Banu Israel, do not go to extremes in your religion. Because the people of the book, of course, they took Prophet Isa alayhi salam and then they took him as a god. So they went into a very big extreme in their religion. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us their story so that we can learn from their mistakes. And He's telling us, don't fall into the same trap as they did. In a hadith as well, Sahih hadith found in Sunan al-Nasa'i, that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was speaking to one of the Sahaba, and he told him, وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَالْغُلُوَّ فِي الدِّينِ فَإِنَّمَا أَهْلَكَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ الْغُلُوُّ فِي الدِّينِ. Be very careful of going to extremes in your religion, because verily what caused the destruction of the people before you is them going to extremes in their religion. Now, hold on a second here. What does it really mean when I say going to extreme in the religion? This is a whole topic by itself. There's different kinds of going to extreme, and I'm just going to mention a few of them, okay? One of them is going to extreme in your own belief and faith. In your belief, for example, towards the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and in the Sahaba. And we've mentioned this several times already, but we'll just do a quick reminder. Yes, we love Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Yes, he is our role model. Yes, our salvation is through his shafa'ah and his intercession on the day of judgment, but he is only a human being. He is still a human being. He is not a god. He is not some sort of divine being. He doesn't have any more knowledge than we do except for what Allah Azza wa Jal taught him. Some people would have this belief that the whole universe was created for Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and that as we speak, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is controlling everything that's happening in the universe. This is a group of Muslims that believe this, and this is a problem. This is, you're now going to extremes. Even the Prophet ﷺ, he says about himself, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. Look, I am just a human being, just like you. In fact, in the hadith that we're not going to talk about today, but we're going to talk about next week, he even told the Sahaba, do not praise me so much like the Christians did to Isa ibn Maryam, to Prophet Isa alayhi salam. Do not do this. Look, I am just a servant of Allah. I am just a messenger of Allah. So therefore, we love and we respect and we praise Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but we recognize that he's not a God. We do not worship him. And we do not do certain actions as well. So there's going to extremes in your faith. There's going to extremes in certain actions as well. So, for example, related to what I just mentioned earlier, some people, this is still present in some cultures even. In fact, I still hear some people do this. And when they make a dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, they ask Allah and they say, "Oh Allah, I ask you in the name of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to grant me this and this." So they are now asking Allah, but they're invoking Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, like as if they're making dua to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as if this is gonna like increase their chances of their dua being accepted. And the Arabic they use bijah nabi. They say bijah nabi, oh Allah, bijah nabi, I ask you to grant me this, this, and that. This is going to extremes, and this is not allowed in our religion. This is a trap. A person may think they are doing good and they are benefiting themselves, but in fact, they are causing themselves to become destroyed. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا الَّذِينَ ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُم. They've lost their way, but they think they are doing really well. This is a problem. Of the ways of people going to extremes in the religion is also going to extremes in their acts of worship. There's a very famous hadith, authentic hadith, where three people, Sahaba, they were innocently discussing with each other, and they said, Yani, we have to do something, like we are so sinful. We need to do something so that we can catch up to the level of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So one of them said, I'm never going to, I'm going to like basically stay away from women for my entire life, and I'm not even going to get married. The other person said, I'm not going to sleep at night anymore for the rest of my life. I'm going to pray all night. And the third person, he said, I'm going to fast every single day of my life. I'm going to fast every single day of my life. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ heard about these people. And again, look, these three people are Sahaba. Obviously, they're not looking to, they want to be with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. They're doing this because they love Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. They're saying, we're so sinful, we want to be with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was not happy at them. And he told them, why would you do this? And he told them, look, I get married to women, so you should get married to women as well. I don't fast every single day of my life, therefore you should not fast every single day of your life. I pray every night and then I sleep. Therefore you should pray every night and then you should sleep. Don't go to extremes in your religion. Don't go to extremes in your acts of worship. And of the types of extremes as well is, and we'll conclude with this and we'll move on, is following innovations, bid'ahs. What is a bid'ah? A bid'ah basically is something, an act of worship that people make up. And we mentioned previously that if someone wants to worship Allah, they have to take it from the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some people, once again, out of their going to extremes, they start to invent certain deeds that don't exist in the sunnah. And they start practicing them thinking that this is bringing them closer to Prophet Muhammad, to Allah Azza wa Jal, and to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But in fact, they are once again committing an action that is in fact leading them astray. And of the common bid'ahs, for example, that we have today, many people, and again, it might come as shocking to some of us, but I stand with my position, and many scholars have already spoken about this issue, and that is to celebrate the birthday of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, celebrating the Mawlid. And so some people, subhanAllah, the entire year, they got nothing to do with the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On that one day, all of a sudden, they specify a time, and they specify a place, and they specify certain actions that they want to do together, and they think that this is a type of love that they're showing Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is a type of act of worship. But in reality, this is a form of going to extreme as well. This is also a type of innovation and should be avoided. So therefore, the cure to going extreme in the religion is to practice Islam in moderation. What's the best way for me to practice Islam in moderation? Very simple. It's the same answer that we've repeated a gazillion times already. Follow the Quran and the Sunnah. Very simple. Next point. Of the cures that will save us from falling into deviation, We mentioned of the reasons of deviation is that many people do not take the threat of shaitan seriously. Can we sit down, please? Can we sit down, please? Hello? Can we go please sit down so that we can not disrupt everyone? Um, Taking precaution against the shaitan. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions this over a dozen times in the Quran, reminding us that shaitan is a serious enemy, that you should take him as your enemy. Allah Azza wa Jal says in Surah Fatir, "Inna shaytana lakum adu, fattakhidhuhu aduwa." Shaitan is your sworn enemy, so therefore take him as an enemy. Okay? Also, and we mentioned already in the previous hadith that the best way that you can protect yourself from the shaitan is by seeking refuge in Allah Azza wa Jal. Ask Allah to protect you through saying, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim." Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, وَإِمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. Whenever you feel yourself being tempted by the shaitan, whenever you start to feel the whisperings of shaitan, فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. Go and seek refuge in Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah Azza wa Jal says, when shaitan challenged Allah Azza wa Jal, he says, "I'm going to lead all of them astray." Allah Azza wa Jal says to shaitan, "Go ahead, go crazy. You want to lead mankind astray? Go. I'm not going to stop you." But then Allah says, "Inna ibadi laysa laka alayhim sultan." You can go to mankind and you can try to whisper and take control over them. But my servants, you will not be able to control them. You will not be able to influence them. And this is how we protect ourselves. Once again, because the servants of Allah rely on Allah Azza wa Jal for their protection against the shaitan. And they do the adhkar. We mentioned the morning and the evening adhkar, the things that you say as well when you do certain actions like eating and drinking. You say Bismillah, entering the house, exiting the house. You are constantly aware that shaitan might be around, and therefore you are taking precautions against the shaitan. And this is why even shaitan says in the Quran, responding to Allah Azza wa Jal after being expelled, he says, قَالَ بِعِزَّتِكَ لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. Oh Allah, I swear by your might that I will lead all of them astray, except for your chosen servants. إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Except for your chosen servants, I will not be able to lead them astray. Why won't you be able to lead them astray? Because they are constantly aware of the influence of shaitan. For example, whenever they get in an argument with someone, whenever they start to feel angry, whenever they start to feel a conflict is happening around them, they're aware this might be the influence of shaitan. I'm getting angry right now. This might be because of shaitan. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. You're constantly aware and conscious that shaitan might be around you. Whenever you sit on a table to eat food with your family, you constantly remind everyone, "Hey guys, say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before you start eating. Bismillah fi awalihi wa akhirihi," so that shaitan does not eat with us. "Hey guys, before you enter your house, don't forget to say Bismillah so that shaitan does not enter our house with us. Let's make sure that we are reciting the Quran in our house so that shaitan does not stay in my house and offer prayers. Let's not forget to make our morning and our evening adhkar so that shaitan is not able to come close to me and not able to harm me." So these kinds of actions are all a form of protection against shaitan, as well as to avoid sinning overall. Because shaitan likes evil. And shayateen, they hang out in places where evil is being committed. Therefore, if I make my house a place where I'm constantly committing sins, and or I go to a place where sins are always being committed, then therefore shaitan is always around me. However, shaitan, as I mentioned already, they dislike the Quran, they dislike praying, they dislike a place where Allah is being remembered. Why? Because the angels are around. If the angels are around, the angel and a shaitan cannot be present in the same place. So it's either the angel is going to leave or the shaitan is going to leave. So therefore, if you are doing actions that attract the angels, then naturally as well, we are protecting ourselves against the shaitan. Of the ways, and this is the last thing that I will mention before we move on, and this is very, very important. in our day-to-day lives. And all of these points are important, but this is more practical. That we mentioned last week or previous week, I think, the issue with people blindly following the trend in front of them, blindly following their role models, blindly following their parents, blindly following their friends. Whatever they do, I'm going to do. Whatever haircut they have, I'm going to follow their haircuts. Whatever accessories they wear, if they're boys and they start wearing a chain, if they start to put on earrings, if they start, I don't know, dyeing their hair, they have wearing certain kind of clothing, they start to wear ripped clothing and ripped jeans, I'm going to do like them because it looks cool and it makes me fit in, it makes everything, it makes me fit in with everyone around me. We mentioned already this is extremely dangerous. This is extremely dangerous. And therefore, we have to verify every action that I see someone around me doing, and I feel tempted to start doing it. Before I do it, I have to first go and check, is this action Islamic? Is this an action that is permissible for me as a Muslim to do? If it is permissible, there is no problem. However, if it is not permissible, then I obey Allah Azza wa Jal and I do not obey the people. And I obey Allah Azza wa Jal. Which comes more? What is more important? Obeying Allah or obeying my parents? Obeying Allah Azza wa Jal comes first. So even, this is something that Allah says in the Quran, even if a parent, and inshallah this is not the case for Muslim parents, but even if a parent is telling you and ordering you, go and commit this sin, or go and do this certain action which you know is not correct, then Allah Azza wa Jal tells you, do not obey them in this matter, but be kind to them. Okay? So, your manners with people should be good. Etiquette and manners when it comes to dealing with others, you should be mindful of your manners. You should be kind and gentle, especially with your parents. You should show them the highest form of respect. But does that mean that I follow every single action that they do? No. Only after I check and I make sure that it is Islamic. For example, if my friends start to wear chains, I have to go check, is it okay for me to wear chains as a boy? And I already answered this before, and I said, this is not of the Muslims. This is not of the act of a Muslim man for them to start wearing chains, because this is not coming from Muslim practice. If my friends at school start to put on makeup and to put on their fake nails, right? Does that make it okay for me as a Muslim girl to start putting on these things? I need to go verify. How do I verify, by the way? What's the best way for me to verify? I need to go and ask the people of knowledge. I need to go and ask the scholar in the masjid or an imam in the masjid. Ask them these things such that I can confirm whether this action is okay or not. And as I had mentioned before, girls, makeup and these fake nails, they are not allowed for you to put on outside in the public. You can put them on in front of your own family if you want to, inside your own house, but you cannot put them on in front of a non-mahram. And even when it comes to doing things like making wudu, you have to take them off. You have to take them off because they put a barrier between your skin and the water. So these are just all kinds of examples. And even Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal says in Surah Al-Jathiyah, ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَى شَرِيعَةٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْرِ فَاتَّبِعْهَا. Look, we have given you a sharia. We have given you a straight path, and we've defined it to you. So follow that straight path. وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And do not follow the whims and the desires of those people who do not know. Yes, sometimes it is tempting. Yes, sometimes you see certain people doing certain actions. Okay? But I need to be careful. I have a destination I need to follow. That I need to reach. I want to attain Jannah. Who doesn't want Jannah? Well, if I want Jannah, I must stay on a straight path. So I need to check, does this action keep me on a straight path? If yes, okay, khalas, what's the problem? No problem. However, if it's going to cause me to start to commit sins or to go against what is permissible, then this is where I put the red line. And I say, I am sorry, I cannot do these actions. So therefore, we have to be very conscious of this. And the same, of course, applies with my own desires. Many times we see certain things or certain objects and items that we want to purchase, or certain foods that we want to eat, or certain activities that we want to participate in. For example, we might see a sweet or a sweet, but it has a form of gelatin which is not permissible. And I know it is not permissible. I have the desire to go and eat it, but I have to be careful. Not every desire is a good desire. Allah Azza wa Jalla says even to Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, addressing him in the Quran, يا داود إنا جعلناك خليفة فاحكم بين الناس بالحق ولا تتبع الهوى فيضلك عن سبيل الله. Do not follow your desires, because if you follow your desires, every desire that comes to you, if you start to follow that, you will find yourself going astray. Even you, O Prophet Dawood. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَضِلُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ شَدِيدٌ بِمَا نَسُوا يَوْمَ الْحِسَابِ. And those who fall astray will find a painful punishment for them. So this is dangerous. Not every whim and not every desire should be acted upon. The line between the halal and the haram is made very clear in our religion. And if you do not know if a certain action or an activity is permissible or not, I have to go and seek out the knowledge such that I can know this. So this includes, for example, verifying practices that are found in the cultures. So sometimes we come from certain cultures and they commit certain practices which are not Islamic, and I might not know it's not Islamic. So, for example, off the top of my head, this is the first thing that is thought of. I know some cultures, for example, they think of it as a way to repel hasad and the evil eye and whatnot. They have this turquoise eye, like a blue eye that they hang up, right? Have you guys seen this before? Like they hang it up, or like they wear it as a necklace, or they put it as a bracelet, and they say, "Oh, this is for you. This is to repel the hasad, and repel the evil eye, and to repel the evil of people." This is not Islamic. This is a form of shirk, in fact. So, but it's coming from a cultural practice. So I have to be conscious of this. I need to verify, is this thing okay for me to do or not? And I'm telling you, for example, in this case, it is not. Things that our own parents do. So again, we have to be careful in this matter. It's a sensitive point, because we have to show very high respect and adab and manners with our parents. But I also have to be conscious. What are my parents making me do? And I'll just give you examples. These are real life examples that people have come to me with. We have, in fact, it's very common to find examples, and these are usually very difficult to deal with, where the young boy or the young girl are pious and they are practicing Islam and they are wishing to learn more and to worship Allah Azza wa Jal, but their own parents are not practicing. And their own parents, maybe their mom doesn't wear hijab and doesn't pray. Their dad, doesn't really do anything related to Islam. But subhanAllah, Allah guided this kid to be a Muslim. We have a lot of these cases, subhanAllah, in the masjid as well. And so many times these kids come to me, like young people your age, like 14, 15 years old, and they say, my parents are forcing me to go to this gathering, and there's going to be loud music in it, and there's going to be boys and girls mixing together and sitting with each other and laughing and giggling with each other. What should I do? And these are always very tricky situations, but the answer to this is, look, you cannot obey your parents in everything. Especially when it comes to the matters of, halal and haram, you cannot obey them in that which is haram. Boys, can we please? And also as well, this comes to things and actions, and especially activities that you guys are being exposed to in your schools. Okay? I know some of you are in middle school, some of us are even in high school, and I know I have been here. I wasn't born here, but I went to junior high here, and I went to high schools here. So I know what you guys deal with very well. And in fact, what you guys are dealing with right now is arguably worse with that and what I had to deal with as well. But either way, I know that sometimes they force you to take certain units. For example, I know in high school, they were trying to force me, and I'm just speaking out of my own experience, They were trying to force me to take part in a dance unit. And they were forcing me, and part of the dance unit, this is just what they practice in the West, boy has to dance with a girl. Boy has to hold the girl's hand, girl has to hold the boy's hand, and they have to start moving together and dancing together. They put on music and they start dancing, and they give them grades. Like, wallah, I'm serious, and I'm sure, and I think you guys will have to deal with the same thing as well. But I am telling you, you have to stand firm. And you have to tell them, look, I am sorry, I'm a Muslim, I cannot do this. Tell this to your teacher. Tell your parents to message the school, to call the school, whatever. If you want to come to me, I can even take action on behalf of the Muslim community and be like, look, this is what we stand for as Muslims. We cannot engage in such activities. Whatever you have to do, you do not have the excuse to engage in haram just to please a certain group of people. You have a destination you want to reach, and that is Jannah. And therefore, every action that you do, you have to verify it before you act on it. How do I verify it? I go and ask the people of knowledge, scholars or imam. Okay, any questions? No questions? Okay, moving on to the hadith. This is one of my favorite hadiths, by the way. The hadith is narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المؤمن القوي خير وأحب إلى الله من المؤمن الضعيف وفي كل خير. A strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal than a weak believer. وفي كل خير. But there is good in both the strong and the weaker believer. واحرص على ما ينفعك. Be keen in what benefits you. Okay? Be eager to do that which benefits you. وَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ, and seek your help and assistance from Allah Azza wa Jal. وَلَا تَعْجَزْ, and do not give up. وَإِنْ أَصَابَكَ شَيْءٍ فَلَا تَقُلْ لَوْ أَنِّي فَعَلْتُ كَذَا وَكَذَا. If you are afflicted with something bad, with something undesirable, then don't just start regretting and say, I wish I did so and so, I wish I didn't do this and that. Rather, ولكن قل قدر الله وما شاء فعل فإن لو تفتح عمل الشيطان. Rather, you should say قدر الله وما شاء فعل, that basically Allah decrees whatever He wants, and whatever Allah wants shall happen. Because if I start to say, if only I did this and that, this will open the door for shaitan to start to influence you. So before I go into the explanation of the hadith, does anyone want to share their own research about the hadith? Yes, you want to go ahead? Jazakumullah khair. So we're going to expand a little more on what you just mentioned. Now this hadith, I really love this. It's one of my favorite hadith. I've given so many khutbahs on it and so many lectures on it. And I call this hadith, honestly, the 5 steps to accomplish anything you want in your life. If you want to succeed in your life in anything that you do, memorize this hadith. Because this hadith outlines 5 steps. If you follow these steps, then you will, inshallah, be successful in anything that you want. The hadith begins and it says, المؤمن القوي خير وأحب إلى الله من المؤمن الضعيف وفي كل خير. The strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weaker believer. Now, what does it mean strong and weak over here? So some scholars interpret this as the stronger in their iman. That the mu'min, the believer, the Muslim who has a stronger belief and a stronger connection with Allah Azza wa Jal is better than the Muslim who has a weaker connection with Allah Azza wa Jal. This Muslim is better and more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal, but Allah still loves both the strong Muslim and the weaker Muslim. So some scholars, they interpret it in this way, which is a correct interpretation, by the way. But some scholars, they actually expand on this meaning. And this is the meaning that I lean towards as well. And they say, not only is the mu'min who is stronger in their belief better, a mu'min who is stronger, boys in the front, mu'min who is stronger in anything is better than and more beloved to Allah than the weaker mu'min. So, for example, the mu'min who is physically stronger than others is better and more beloved to Allah. The mu'min who has more knowledge compared to other mu'mins is more beloved and better and more beloved to Allah. The mu'min who is more skilled in anything, could be at school, could be skilled in basketball, could be skilled in ideally something that benefits the people, obviously, something in Islamic knowledge, for example. It is better and more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal than someone who is weaker. But Allah loves both kinds of people. Now, why is that stronger person more beloved and more better and more beloved? Because the scholars explain that a weaker believer perhaps is able to benefit himself. But because he is weak, whether it is weak in his knowledge or his strength or whatever it is, if he is weak in this field, he will not be able to benefit other people. However, if someone is strong in anything, someone who is physically strong, they can help the Muslim community. They can help with the construction. They can help with volunteering activities. They can help with whatever. Someone who is strong in their math skills, they can go and help other Muslims learn math and become better, and they can teach others. Someone who is stronger in the Quran can go and teach and benefit people with the Quran. So this is why someone who is stronger overall is better in their rank and more, Allah loves them more compared to someone who is weaker. But Allah still loves all believers nonetheless, because they are believers at the end of the day. Now, this hadith also shows us one of the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, that Allah Azza wa Jal loves. Allah Azza wa Jal has the attributes of love, meaning Allah has serious love to people. It's not just like a fake love. It's a serious love. And Allah has more love to certain people compared to other people. Why does Allah have, and some scholars say, how does a person obtain a higher level of love to Allah Azza wa Jal? Well, they say, a person who has attributes that are connected to Allah Azza wa Jal's attributes will become more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal. What does this mean? For example, Allah is Ar-Rahim. Allah is the most merciful. Humans who have mercy in them to other people and animals and the creation is more beloved to Allah. Allah Azza wa Jal is Al-Kareem. Allah is the most generous. And of course, these are qualities that are unique to Allah. But humans can also be generous. So someone who is generous in their money, in their time, in their attitude, right? This person shall become more beloved to Allah. And so on and so forth. So the more that a person becomes connected to the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, the more beloved they shall become to Allah Azza wa Jal. This is the first point. The stronger believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weaker believer. But Allah loves both of them. Second point, وَحْرِصْ عَلَى مَا يَنْفَعُكَ. Be sure to do that which benefits you. So in the first point, Allah is encouraging you to become better at everything. Allah wants you to become strong in your education, in your Quran, in your deen, even in your dunya. Allah wants you to succeed. Allah wants you to become the best and have the best kind of skills and the best kind of qualities. After you obtain these qualities, don't just sit down and do nothing. Go and pursue that which benefits you. Go use the skills and the knowledge and the strengths that Allah blessed you with in order to go and benefit the people. And subhanAllah, every single one of us here, we have strengths and we have weaknesses. Therefore, all of us should be conscious. What am I good at and what am I not good at? So perhaps you can see that, okay, I am very good at Quran. Well, don't just sit down and keep your Quran to yourself. Go and start helping others with their Quran. Go and start volunteering maybe and helping with Quran. Go and teach others Quran. Maybe Allah blessed you and made you so smart in school. Don't just keep that knowledge to yourself. Go out, go and teach others, go and help others. These skills and these strengths that Allah Azza wa Jalla has blessed you with, don't just keep them. Don't just waste your time. This is exactly what Allah is saying. Don't waste your time. Allah has given you a set of strengths, a set of skills, not just so that you can waste your time, not just that you can just live your life for your own benefit. Rather, have a vision, have a goal, have a target for yourself, using those skills that Allah Azza wa Jal had blessed you with. And as I mentioned, the benefits could be both worldly benefits for the dunya and can be for your akhirah as well. And in fact, a proper Muslim should have both kinds of goals. It's unrealistic for someone to say, I only want to become better in my deen and I don't want to become better in my dunya. How are you going to be successful then? You're going to be a failure in your dunya then. Nobody's going to want you. You're not going to get accepted to university. You're not going to get a job. You need to have goals for your dunya as well. You need to work hard in your dunya. You need to study hard at school. You need to have goals that are beneficial for your own worldly life as well. You know, inshallah, in the future, you're going to grow up, you're going to open your own house, you're going to have a family. So start to plan and have goals and have a vision. This is what I want to become and work towards that. However, it is also not correct to say that, oh, I only want goals for my dunya and I don't want any goals for my religion. And this is unfortunately the case for a lot of Muslims here in the West. They only think about their dunya. I want to earn this much amount of money. I want this car when I grow up. I want this house when I grow up. I want this and that. And they have all kinds of dreams. And they don't have a single dream that, okay, I want to finish memorizing the Quran. And in fact, they never ever think to themselves that I can ever memorize the Quran. They think, ah, akhi, this is the job for the shaykh. This is the job for the imam. And this is from shaitan, obviously, trying to get you away. But have a goal for your own religion. Perhaps I want to memorize the Quran. I want to become knowledgeable. I want to learn more about fiqh. I want to learn more about hadith. I want to start memorizing hadith. Have some goals that are related to your religion as well. And do not put yourself down. Trust me when I say you are much more capable than you think. And you know, I'll just add one comment about my own self. Never, ever, wallahi, I am saying this, I am telling you the truth. Never, ever, if you were to ask me 10 years ago that I would be someone who memorizes the Quran, who memorized the full Quran, never would I have imagined that I would ever lead a prayer here in the Masjid. Never had I imagined that I would be sitting like this in front of you and lecturing you guys about like this. Wallahi, I'm not saying this just to, I'm being 100% serious. I would have laughed if you told me that this is what I was going to become. And this is no doubt from Allah Azza wa Jal. But with the point that I'm trying to make, if someone like me is able to do it, then I promise you, you guys are much more capable. And you guys can reach further places than anyone else. Don't put yourself down. You can also memorize the Quran. You can become a scholar. You can become knowledgeable as well. Don't put yourself down. But in order for you to reach that level, you need to set goals for yourself. Because if you do not have goals that you are working towards, how are you going to accomplish anything? You need to have a target in order for you to work towards, such that you can measure your progress along the way. Okay? So this is what this is what وَحْرِصْ عَلَى مَا يَنْفَعُكَ means. Pursue that which benefits you, both for your religion and for the dunya. Have a balance between dunya and religion. Okay? Wasta'in billah. This is the most important step for accomplishing anything. Whenever you want to have to accomplish anything, if you want to become successful at anything in your life, if you want to succeed at school, if you want to pass that exam, if you want to get that job, if you want to accomplish your dreams, step number one in all of these things is by seeking assistance in Allah Azza wa Jal. If you are not starting by asking Allah Azza wa Jal for help, you are already starting in the wrong place. And you are setting yourself up for failure. You have to begin by asking Allah Azza wa Jal for help and to make things easy for you. You have to make dua to Allah. Sit down, make dua to Allah that, oh Allah, help me out. Oh Allah, I don't know what's good for me. Make an istikhara. You guys, you know what is an istikhara? An istikhara is basically you want to ask Allah for help in a decision that you want to make. You don't know whether a decision is good or bad for you, so you ask Allah for help. So you go and pray 2 rak'ahs of istikhara. And then after your 2 rak'ahs, you start making dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. That, oh Allah, you know what is better for me. Oh Allah, you have my qadr pre-written. You know what is good, better for me. So, oh Allah, guide me for that which is better for me. Oh Allah, open the doors that will make me successful. You have to start by asking Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, someone might come ahead and ask, but why should I ask Allah for help if I am already smart enough? If I am already capable and intelligent enough, I already have good skills, why should I ask Allah? Well, my response to that, who gave you your intelligence and your skills in the first place? It is Allah Azza wa Jal. You are not successful at school because you are smart, believe me. It's because Allah Azza wa Jal blessed you with an intelligence. Allah chose to give you that kind of skill. Not because you are some kind of special being, but because Allah chose to give you this intelligence. You are not knowledgeable because you are special and you have a special memory. No, it's because Allah Azza wa Jal chose to give you that kind of memory and that kind of knowledge. You are not special, and the people that you see around you who are successful and are multimillionaires or who are big sheikhs and imams, they are not successful because of just their own efforts. Rather, because Allah Azza wa Jal willed for them to be successful in this manner. Therefore, if it is all coming from Allah Azza wa Jal, I have to go back to Allah Azza wa Jal for anything that I want to do. This has to be step number one in anything that I want to accomplish in my life, in any goal that I want to accomplish in my life. This is wasta'in billah. And then Allah gives you a little bit of motivation. And Allah is telling you, وَلَا تَعْجَزْ. Don't give up. You have a dream you want to accomplish. You have a goal you want for yourself. You asked Allah for help. You made a lot of dua. Okay. Do you think that this success will come to you on a silver platter? Do you think that, okay, let's say your goal, you want to become a millionaire for whatever reason. And you made dua, oh Allah, please make me a millionaire. Do you think that $1 million will come in the sky in front of you just because you made dua? What do you think? No, it doesn't work that way. Everybody knows that you have to get up and work. You have to put in an effort. You have to, all the successful people around you, they spent, sleepless nights working hard. There was a lot of sweat. There was a lot of tears. There was a lot of difficulty. There were a lot of bumps along the way that they had to overcome. A lot of challenges and difficulties. So Allah is telling you, don't give up. So Allah is implying that, the Prophet ﷺ is implying that it's not going to be an easy way. Your goal, okay, you want to memorize the Quran. Alhamdulillah, it's such a beautiful goal. But you need to work on yourself. Don't expect it to come just like that. Ask Allah to make it easy, but you have to go and actually open the Quran and sit down and memorize. And there are certain surahs that you will find difficult, and you will fail once and twice and 3 and 10 times, but the 11th time maybe you'll be successful. Similarly, perhaps you want to become successful at school. You'll study hard. You'll work hard. You'll study. Okay, maybe you'll fail once, twice, three times. You keep working hard. No matter how much you fall down, you stand back up again and you work on yourself. You do not give up. You do not just stand down. This is not the attitude of a Muslim. You do not give up. This is the time for you to now put in the efforts as much as you can. Because only people who are patient and people who persevere and put in genuine effort will find success in their lives. And if you don't believe me, you can look this up. Go and read the story of every successful owner of a business in the world. Whether it is someone like, I don't know, have you guys heard of Bill Gates? I'm sure everyone has heard of Bill Gates. Have you guys heard of Jeff Bezos? Have you heard of Elon Musk? I'm sure everybody has heard these names. Go and read their stories. Even though, yes, they're non-Muslims, okay? And these are not role models that we should be following, to be honest. But I'm just saying, look purely from a story perspective. You will see from their stories, they didn't become the people they are just like that. There were a lot of failures that they faced. There were a lot of times where they almost went bankrupt. There were a lot of times when they faced severe hardship. But at the end of the day, they faced their success in the dunya, of course. And the same thing when it comes to religious success. If you go and look at some of the biggest shuyukh in the world, whether it is in the West or wherever they are, you will find that many of them perhaps have fled persecution. At many times they were threatened by their own governments. If you continue, we're going to arrest you. If you continue, you're going to be punished and tortured. And then they fled from country to country to country out of pursuit of knowledge. It doesn't come easy. There will be difficulties along the way. But as a Muslim, you don't just give up in the face of a difficulty. You fail once, twice, 10, 100 times. You stand up again and you work hard and you continue. فإن أصابك شيء فلا تقل لو أني فعلت كذا وكذا. We all know that things don't always go the way we want to in our life. Sometimes you genuinely want something and you worked so hard for it and you wanted it so badly and you worked hard and you put in the effort, but it just didn't work out. The result was not the way that you wanted it to be. Maybe you really, really wanted to get into this certain school and you tried so hard and you genuinely put in so much effort, but you didn't get in. Maybe you wanted to get in a certain university and you didn't get in. Maybe you wanted a certain job, but you didn't get it. Maybe you had a certain dream that you wanted to accomplish, but everything was standing in your way and it just didn't happen. It happens. Dunya, this is how dunya works. This is the test of life. So the hadith here is teaching us, if you find the doors closed on you, you knocked all the doors, but all the doors were closed. Now is not the time for you to look back and regret. Okay? You don't start looking back and say, I wish the reason I failed now is because back in the day I made such a decision. I wish I didn't make that decision. I wish I didn't speak to that person. I wish I didn't follow their advice. I wish I didn't speak to that person. I wish I didn't go to that place. You start just thinking about all the events that took place and you start just blaming everything. You start blaming the people around you. You start to blame yourself. You start to blame the circumstances. If only I wasn't this. If only I didn't go. I didn't hurt myself in that one place. I would have been successful. If only this happened to me. So you go into this endless spiral of thoughts and regrets. That I just wish I did this and that. I wish I did that and that. Prophet ﷺ is telling us, these thoughts are opening up the door for shaitan to come in. You're inviting now shaitan to come in. Why? Because shaitan is now going to kick you down. Shaitan always waits until you are rock bottom, until you are at your lowest of the low, until you are feeling like a failure, until you feel like you were unsuccessful. Shaitan loves to take advantage of these moments to come and kick you down and make you feel like a failure and make you feel depressed and make you feel all kinds of unpleasant feelings that it's this guy's fault and it's your fault and it's this person's fault. But the Prophet ﷺ starts teaching us, don't start regretting. What should you say if you face a failure in your life? You genuinely did everything that you could. You developed your skills. You asked Allah for help. You pursued that which benefited you. You truly thought something was going to be good for you. Prophet ﷺ is teaching you to say, قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلْ. Memorize this phrase. قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلْ. That look, Allah has decreed something. And whatever Allah decrees shall actually happen. And realize something, dear boys and girls. Sometimes you want something for yourself. But whatever Allah has written for you is the best kind of destiny for you. Sometimes we might not understand it. We might see something as a failure. That how come I didn't get this when I tried so hard? The answer to this, Allah has a better plan for you. And if every single one of you saw all the paths and all the different routes that a person could walk through and take, you would always choose Allah's qadr for you. Because you will understand that Allah's qadr is always the best qadr for you. Always, always, always. So this is why you always say, قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلْ. It is what it is. I'm just going to move on. I'm going to restart. I'm going to create another goal for myself. I'm going to ask Allah for help. I'm going to pursue that which benefits me and others. And I'm going to continue to work again. I failed once. Oh well. Perhaps I'll succeed somewhere else. And we actually see this concept, and I'll conclude the hadith with this. We actually see this concept beautifully demonstrated in the Battle of Uhud. There's a battle that took place in the Seerah of Prophet Muhammad, which we'll cover later in the future. The Battle of Uhud. The Battle of Uhud, the Muslims, they were in Medina. They prepared an army and they left Medina. And they fought against the Quraysh. And they suffered a lot of casualties. They suffered a lot of deaths. Okay? A lot of Sahabas were killed in the Battle of Uhud. Now, before the Muslims left Medina, and many people actually don't know this, there was actually a discussion that was taking place in Medina. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ actually told the Muslims, I don't think we should leave Medina. I think we should fight this battle inside Medina. Because we know the streets of Medina, and if they attack us in our own city, they're not going to win. But if we leave Medina, then the story is going to be different. Long story short, a lot of the Sahaba, they said, no, we should leave Medina. Okay, so they disagreed with the opinion of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and so Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he went with the opinion of the people. And he left Medina. And as a result, they suffered a lot of casualties. Yet, subhanAllah, if you read the Seerah, you will never find ever Prophet Muhammad ﷺ blaming the Muslims in the Battle of Uhud after the battle was finished. And see, you will never find a narration where he said, see, I told you so. I told you shouldn't have left Medina. See, this is what happened. This is your guys' fault. Never, ever do you see this happening. Never, ever is he seen blaming the Muslims or blaming himself. Why? Because he tried his best. And he made dua to Allah. And he asked the Muslims, and eventually they thought that what the Muslims wanted was the best solution for them. They realized the hard way that this was not the correct decision. But it is what it is. قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلْ. Very beautiful demonstration of this. So this is the teachings of the hadith. If you follow these 5 steps in anything that you do in your life, then inshallah you'll always be successful. And you will always find yourself happy and living in peace. First of all, A stronger believer is better than a weaker believer. Acquiring the skills, becoming better, becoming good at what you do. Pursuing that which benefits you and benefiting others. Making goals for you, goals for your deen and goal for your dunya. And asking Allah for assistance. And do not give up along the way. And if things don't go the way you want them to go, then say, قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلْ. So the next hadith, inshallah, we'll mention, narrated by Ibn Abbas, that he heard Umar radiallahu anhu saying, do not exaggerate me, as the Prophet Muhammad said, don't exaggerate me like the Nasara, like the Christians exaggerated Isa ibn Maryam. I am the slave of Allah and His Messenger. We'll discuss this hadith next week, inshallah. But in the meantime, are there any questions? Yes? Specific, yes.
So like you just ask them what's best, but isn't it better to ask what you want, like then if it's best for you?
So that's a good question. Now, overall, when you are making istikhara, what I recommend, just tell Allah, like open your heart up to Allah. Be like, oh Allah, for example, I'll just give you an example. I want to apply to university, okay? Oh Allah, I want to get into this university, but I don't know if this is the best way for me. I don't know if this is the best path for me. So you're asking, oh Allah, if this decision is the best decision for me, then oh Allah, make it easy for me. Make me feel comfortable about the decision. Open the paths for me and make it easy for me to obtain that university. But if it is not good for me, then oh Allah, guide me to that which is better for me. This is the best way to make an istikhara. Because sometimes you want something and you really, really, really want it. But at the end of the day, as I mentioned, sometimes there is something better for you in place. Even if I might not understand it, but I put my trust in Allah that He knows better than me and He wants the best for me. So this is why it's better for you to make the istikhara in this way. Yes? Istikhara means that you are, okay, so you know how, for example, let's say you are about to make a big decision in your life, okay? You're about to, again, using the same example, you are about to enter university. And you don't know which university you want to enter, okay? Or whatever, okay, we'll use high school. You don't know which high school you want to enter. So you go to your mom and dad for advice, right? You ask them, what do you think, what do you think? And then your mom will tell you her opinion, your dad will tell you his opinion, right? This is seeking advice from human beings. Istikhara, in a way, you're asking Allah you're kind of like, quote unquote, seeking advice from Allah. Okay? Now, obviously, you're not going to talk to Allah and Allah's not going to tell you. But you're telling Allah, or you're asking Allah, oh Allah, this is the situation, and I don't know what's better for me. And so you ask Allah to make a certain path easy for you, or to open up the path that is better for you, and to make you happy with it. To make you happy with the decision. Okay? So this is an istikhara. So istikhara, basically, you go, you pray 2 rak'ahs. There's a dua al-istikhara that you can look up and you can recite it. But essentially, you're asking, oh Allah, guide me for that which is best for me and for that which is most pleasing for you. Does that make sense? Questions? No questions? Okay. Why is it dangerous to go to extremes in religion? I think we're in the girls. Yes?
Because
It can lead you astray and it will lead to a person's destruction. Just like the hadith we mentioned about the 3 people. I'm going to fast every day. I'm going to pray every single night for the whole night. I'm not going to sleep, right? This is going to be too much on you. Like, why would you go to that extreme? So going to extremes in any kind of whatever the type of extreme is, it will lead to a person's destruction. How do we take precaution against shaitan? Yes, in the back. Mhm. That's one way. So saying "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim," taking him as a serious enemy, doing the adhkar, right? Being conscious of shaitan whenever, at all times, from the morning to sleep, taking him as an enemy. How do we take precaution from blindly following people and desires? Hmm? Yes, very good. We have to study the Islamic evidences and proofs to see, is this kind of action Islamic or not. And whenever I am in doubt or I'm not sure, I need to seek out the knowledge from the correct sources, which are the scholars and the imams. Why is a stronger believer more beloved to Allah than a weak believer? Boys. Yes. Very good. And plus the fact that a strong believer has a great potential to not just benefit himself but also to benefit others with the thing which he is strong in. Is it permissible to pursue worldly benefits, girls? So is it okay for me as a Muslim to have goals for my dunya? Yes. Yes, it is, obviously. And should, every one of us should have goals for our own dunya. You want to become successful in your school. You want to have a successful job. You want to be a successful person in this dunya. But don't forget that you should also have goals for your religion. And arguably, the goals for your religion are much more important than your goals for the dunya. Right? What is the first action that must be done whenever a person wants to work towards a goal? Yes, Musab? Very good. So you want to ask Allah Azza wa Jal for guidance through dua and istikhara. If a person asks Allah for assistance, does that mean that they are guaranteed to be successful in whatever they're asking Allah to be successful in? Yes, in the middle. Yes, in the front, middle. Very good. They're not guaranteed success because you have to put in an effort. You can't just sit back in your couch and expect Allah to just give you whatever you were asking for without you working for it. You have to put in work, show Allah that you are serious. You mean serious business. And even then, as we mentioned, sometimes you might put in effort and things might not work out. So you never know. And in the case where an outcome is in an unexpected outcome, so you put in a lot of effort, but you ended up failing. Okay? What should a Muslim say? Yes? قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلْ means Allah decrees whatever, Allah has decreed everything, and whatever Allah wants shall happen. Okay? Any questions? So let's continue where we left off last week in terms of the fiqh. So last week we were talking about the concept of the khuff and wiping on the khuff. There's one more thing about the khuff which we did not mention, and this is very important. If I take off my khuff, so let's say, so now we all understand the conditions of the khuff. If I put on my khuff, so if I make wudu and I wash my feet, and then I put on clean pairs of khuff, and I am within the time limit, and I do not have a major hadath, I can wipe on the khuff, right? We all understand this. Okay. Let's say I wipe on my khuff. I made wudu and I wiped on the khuff. And I am fulfilling all the conditions. But then later in the day, I decide to take off the khuff. For whatever reason, I wanted to take off the khuff. What happens to my wudu? My wudu becomes invalid. And I have to now restart my wudu. Okay? Unless I made wudu by washing my feet. Let me clarify. Okay? If I made wudu, okay, so pay attention here. I know it's a little bit confusing. I know fiqh is always, you always need to pay attention. Let's say I made wudu and I washed my feet. And then I put on the khuff and then I took off the khuff. I still have wudu. Why? Because I made wudu by washing my feet. However, if I am wearing the khuff and I don't have a wudu, and I am now renewing my wudu, okay? Like let's say, okay, I'll just give you an example. I made a full wudu and I washed my feet and then I put on the khuff, okay? Then I fell asleep with my khuff on. Then I woke up. When I wake up from my deep sleep, do I have wudu or not? I don't have a wudu, so I need to go and make wudu. Am I allowed to wipe on the khuff? Yes. Yes, we mentioned that at the beginning. You are allowed to wipe on the khuff. So I made the wudu and I wiped on the khuff. So was this wudu made by wiping on the khuff or washing my feet? By wiping on the khuff. In this case, if I take off the khuff, my wudu is invalid. And I have to now redo my wudu and I cannot wipe on the khuff anymore. I have to wash my feet again. Does that make sense? Huh? Okay, good. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Who's confused? Who doesn't know what's going on? Okay, what's confusing? Because I know it's a little bit confusing. Khuf is always a little bit. Yes. So, okay, I'll repeat the example again. Okay, I made a full wudu and I washed my feet. Okay, I have wudu, right? So now, if I wear the khuf, am I meeting the conditions of wiping on the khuf? Yes, so this is from last week. Just forget the stuff here. I'm talking about last week. So then let's say I went to sleep, okay? And then I woke up again. Am I still meeting the conditions that allow me to wipe on the khuf? I am, right? Do you understand it this far? Okay. But now I don't have wudu, do I? Because I slept. I need to renew my wudu. So now, when I am making wudu, we just agreed you can wipe on the khuf, right? So let's say I make wudu after falling asleep and I wiped on the khuf. Okay? I now have wudu. Is that correct? Now what I am telling you is, in this case, if I take off my khuf, I don't have wudu anymore. Because the wudu was not made by washing the foot. The wudu was made by wiping the khuf. Does that make sense? So if the wudu was made by wiping the khuf, taking off the khuf invalidates the wudu. Make sense? Anyone else who's confused and doesn't know what's going on? Okay, alhamdulillah. Now we get into so now we're done with the khuf, by the way. So that's everything, inshallah, you need to know about the khuf. Now, the question that is probably on all of our minds. What about wiping on the socks? Now, here, the majority of scholars agree, but there is one school of thought that have very strictly said you are not allowed at all to wipe on the socks. Okay? If you follow that school of thought, you are free to follow that opinion. But I am just going to tell you the opinion of the majority of the scholars. The majority of the scholars agree that the same rules which apply on the khuf also apply on the socks. Meaning, did you see all the rules we explained for the khuf? The same rules apply for the socks. This is what the majority of the scholars say. So meaning, the sock must be long enough. It must cover the ankles. Okay? If I am wearing one of those short socks, or if my sock goes down and it shows my ankle, this is not a sock I can wipe on. If I am wearing long socks that, just go up to here to my shin or something, this is okay. And it should also be in good condition, just like the khuff. It cannot have any holes from the ankles below. If I am wearing a sock and my big toe is showing out of my sock, okay, I cannot wipe on this sock because it has a hole in a place where the water, in an area which should be washed by water, right? So basically, the sock should not have any holes from the ankles below. So if there's any holes in the toes or from the underneath or whatever, then this should not be wiped over. You should take off the sock. And the same 4 conditions apply. So I can only wipe on the sock if, number 1, I made a full wudu and I washed my feet. Exactly the same conditions as the khuff. I made a wudu and I washed my feet, then I put on my sock. And I should not be in a state of major hadath. And the socks must be clean from any najasa, and I must also be within the time limit. Is that clear for everyone? Okay? And the same thing applies. The same concept I explained earlier. If I made a wudu and I wiped on the sock, then I took off the sock, my wudu is now invalid. And I must now repeat my wudu. And once again, I just want to repeat this again. How do I wipe on the sock? Because I see tons of people doing this wrong in the wudu area when I come to the wudu area. Taking water, boys especially, pay attention to this because I see you guys making mistakes in this all the time. Taking water and splashing it on your foot is not wiping the sock. You have not completed your wudu. Okay? Wiping on the sock means I wet my hands with water and I wipe from my toes up just the top part of my foot. Okay? Just wipe once. One wipe on the right and one wipe on the left. That's it. That's wiping on the sock. Okay? You don't need to splash. You don't need to come upstairs, mashallah, with socks that are drenched in water. Okay? That's not wiping on the socks. Okay? And the evidences that the majority of the scholars use is that there are several narrations. In fact, there's like over 40 narrations, in fact, that show Sahaba used to wipe on the sock. Not the khuff, socks. And the scholars say, well, if the Sahaba are seen wiping on the socks, that means they must have gotten this from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now as I mentioned, there's one school of thought that completely believe that it is not permissible at all to wipe on the sock. Okay? And their evidence for this, they say that they don't have an evidence from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is no hadith that says, and they're right by the way, that there is no hadith from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that say that you can wipe on the sock. But the majority of the scholars, they say the Sahaba used to do them. And obviously the Sahaba is not going to make something up. Okay? Clear? Wiping on the socks is clear? Okay. There are also a few other things. Okay, inshallah. We're not told that the ankle is not mentioned. We are just told to wipe on the top of the foot. That's it. Yeah. So I have not read this before. As far as I know, it's ظهر القدم, which is the top of the foot. So it's just from the top. And anyways, moving on. There are a few other things which we are also allowed to wipe on, given the conditions. Okay? We are told wiping on the turban or wiping on the hijab. So pay attention to this next point. There are plenty of evidences, authentic sahih hadith, I have one of them up on the screen, that show that men are allowed to wipe on their amama. the turban. Okay? What is the amama? It's, sometimes people they wrap this piece of clothing on their head, right? You guys know, it's like this picture, okay? What black stuff? Okay.
Like in Mecca for the rich people.
Okay, stop talking, please. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about. It's just like up in the picture, okay? Look at the guy up in the picture. You see that white thing he's wearing? And he wraps above his head. And sometimes you see people coming like this. This is called the amama, okay? So boys, when I say amama or slash turban, your baseball hats do not count. Your kufis, this, even the one I'm wearing on my head, does not count. Why? Because I can take it off easily. Okay? I am purely and only talking about the amama, the one that is wrapped with the head and takes a long time to wrap around your head and fix it in your head. There are many narrations that indicate that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would wipe over his socks and he would wipe over his turban. Meaning, when it comes to when you are making wudu and it comes to the wiping the head now, there is now like a rukhsa, like you have a permission that you don't need to take off the amama and wipe your head and then finish your wudu and then go and put on the amama again. There is plenty of authentic evidences to show that Prophet ﷺ, when it comes to wiping the head, he would just wipe on the amama. And he would not wipe. Can you please cut it off? He would only wipe on the amama. Okay? Again, I need to emphasize, this is not talking about my kufi right here. Okay? I am not talking about your baseball hats. Okay? Anything that can be taken off easily does not fall in this. Clear? Okay. What about the hijab? As for the hijab, we do not have any authentic evidence that indicates that ladies can wipe on the hijab. Okay? And this is why scholars agree that men can wipe on the amama because they have clear hadith. As for the ladies, there is no sahih hadith that show that a lady can wipe on the hijab. However, and here is where now scholars differ. Okay? So some of them say, no, you're absolutely not allowed at all under any circumstances to wipe on your hijab. Other scholars say, no, hijab is in a way like the amama, and you can just wipe on it because the men can also wear the amama. But the most correct and agreed upon opinion, the rajih, the most reliable opinion, is it depends on the condition. Okay? So, if there is a lot of difficulty, if you are in a difficult situation where it is difficult for you to take off your hijab, then you are given the permission to wipe on your hijab. For example, let's say I need to go and make wudu, okay, and you're wearing your hijab, and you're out in public, and you can't find a private place, okay, and you're in a place and you're making wudu, and there's a chance that a man might walk by, okay, and obviously, you need to have your hijab on if a strange man is gonna walk by. So, this is an example of a situation where it is very difficult for you to take off your hijab, so you would wipe on the hijab. Or, for example, if you are now, which is today, this is no longer really the case, but back in the day, if you were worried about your own health because of cold weather and you don't want to take off your hijab, then it is also permissible to wipe on the hijab. But again, today we have heaters and indoors and everything, so it's not really the case anymore. So basically, this is what the scholars say. If there is extreme difficulty in taking off your hijab, then you are allowed to. Otherwise, you should avoid wiping on the hijab if possible. And to be completely honest with you, nowadays, in 99.9% of the cases, girls, you should not be wiping on the hijab. Because you have washrooms, private washrooms, where it's only ladies only, obviously, where you can take off your hijab comfortably and you know that no men are going to walk in. And so you can take off the hijab, you can do your wudu, and then you can put your hijab back on again. This is the ruling on the hijab. And note, by the way, the same exact concepts, conditions apply for wiping on the turban and wiping on the hijab. The same conditions as wiping on the socks and wiping on the khuff. Meaning, if you want the concession or the permission to wipe on your amama, you should already have a wudu. You should do it. You should wear your amama in a state of purity. Your amama should not have any najas. You should not be in a state of major hadath, and you should wipe within the time limit. Okay, so the same exact conditions. Clear? Okay. We'll take questions in a second. I know some of us might have questions, but let me just finish, inshallah. And the last thing we'll talk about in terms of wiping is wiping on a cast or a band-aid. Okay, so if a person breaks their arm or they break their leg, obviously it's going to cause them great amount of difficulty and pain for them to take off the cast and then put it on later on. So are they allowed to wipe in this case? The short answer is yes, if there will be injury for them if they put the water on it. So I'll explain in detail. So, and the hadith that we get this from is a long hadith, a narration narrated by Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu, where basically one time the Sahaba were out on an expedition, and one of the Sahaba injured their head. Okay, so they had a head injury. And one day, this person entered a state of major hadath, the person with a head injury. And a person who is in a state of major hadath, in order for them to become tahir again, they need to do ghusl. But he didn't have much knowledge. So he asked the Sahaba, is it okay for me to just wipe on my head instead of pouring water on it for my ghusl? Because I am worried because of my injury. The Sahaba at the time said, no. You have to pour water on your head. So this man, he did ghusl, and he poured water on his head, and he actually died as a result of this. When Prophet Muhammad ﷺ found out about this, he became very angry. And he said about the Sahaba, they killed him. May Allah kill them. They killed him, may Allah kill them. Why would they answer a question when they do not have the knowledge? And then he says, it would have been enough for this person who's now dead, it would have been enough for him to do tayammum and then wipe on his head, or essentially put a cloth on his head or something and then wipe over it and then wash the rest of his body with water. Meaning, in this hadith, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is giving the concession. This is someone who's injured. If you pour water on his injured body part, he's going to suffer. Like in this case, he died. So he told him, why didn't you just let him wipe on a piece of cloth up above this injured area? So fast forward to 2024, when someone falls and they break their arm or break their leg, they go to the hospital, they do their surgery, whatever, and then they put a cast. Now, obviously, the whole point of the cast is because this guy's body part is injured. They want it to heal. You should not be taking off that cast and pouring water on it, because now you can make things worse. So, if your doctor says you have to keep the cast on, then you are given the permission, in the case of making wudu, for example, to wipe above the cast. So let's say I am making wudu, and I have a cast on my left arm, and I wash my right arm. When it comes to my left arm, all I need to do is wet my hands and just wipe above the entire cast. Wipe over and this is important. I have to wipe on the entire cast. Okay, not just a little bit. No, the whole cast I need to wipe on it. Okay, and that is sufficient. Okay, makes sense? Now, what about if I have a band-aid? Can I wipe on the band-aid? Well, once again, it depends. Is your life do you have a life threat because of the band-aid? So, I'm just saying oh, it hurts is not an excuse, okay? Oh, it's burning my skin does not count as an excuse, okay? Is your life in danger? Like, for example, on a serious note, some people, when they leave the hospital, for example, after a surgery, sometimes they might put a person might have had tubes inside their bodies, like IV drips and whatever. And so they take off this IV and they put a bandage on top, okay? Now, if even though it might be a small bandage, it's not a whole cast, but sometimes the doctors might say, don't take it off. Because if you take it off, you might cause the blood to start gushing out again. So if this is the kind of bandage that's on you, then yes, once again, it is allowed to wipe on this body part, on the band-aid part. You put water on the rest of the body part, but you wipe on top of the bandage. Okay? But if you simply got a paper cut, oh Allah, I was playing soccer and I tripped and I fell and I had my calf started bleeding and I just put a bandage on it and it's burning me so much when I touch it. Habibi, man up, take the bandage off, pour water on it. Okay? So this is the ruling on the bandage and the cast. Now, just a quick note here, by the way. Unlike the amama and the hijab and the socks and the khuff, the cast has no time limit for obvious reasons. Okay? So you're not going to take off the cast after a day or 3 days. The cast has unlimited time, and you can also use it. The cast can be used on both the minor hadath and the major hadath. Khuff can only be used for minor hadath. Cast can be used for both minor and major. But of course, the catch here is the cast has to be removed when your body part is healed. You can't just like make wudu and then put the cast back on again. Okay, it doesn't work that way. The cast is because the doctor told you you have to put this cast on. But khalas, if your arm is now healed and you can now move it and it's healthy again, take off the cast and don't put it back on again, unless the doctor tells you otherwise. Okay? So I hope now we all understand the concept of wiping on the khuff and wiping on the amama and hijab. I know there's going to be a bunch of questions, so bring them on. Yes. No. So I just said this. The cast, the khuff, we said has a time limit, right? The khuff has a time limit of 1 day or 3 days, right? Cast has no time limit because a person might take a whole month to heal up and they need to keep the whole cast on, right? Khuff can only be wiped on in times of minor hadath, whereas a cast can be wiped on for minor and major hadath, right? So, yes.
But what if your doctor says you can't like pour water on top of the cat? What do you do?
You're not pouring water.
No, I mean like even if you like.
No, you will never find a doctor who says that because like a cast is very thick. So all I'm saying is like you're wetting your hands. You're not pouring water. You just have wet hands and you're just doing this to your cast. That's it. So it's not gonna do anything to the cast. Yes.
That's one scenario. It's like a turban, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like some Indians were like
Yes. Well, the Indian who's wearing the turban is not the same turban as the Muslim is wearing his turban. Okay, so his rules don't apply to us. Here.
So I just like wipe on the part that like the part of the head that I
Yes. So, like I said, it's the same thing. I said, if like let's say you have, I don't know, a cast from the middle of my arm to here, for example. I don't know for whatever reason. Okay, which is a weird cast. I've never ever seen a cast like that. But okay, let's say it exists. You wash this part that doesn't have the cast on it because that's not harmed by water, and you wipe on the rest. Okay. Yes. Question.
broken and like your full arm has a cast. So you wipe this part with this hand. How do you wipe this part? You just like do this.
Yeah, you do. Yes. Yes. Other questions? Yes.
So you have to like wipe on the whole cast or just where the owie is.
Or the awi? No, you have to wipe on the whole cast. Question? Yes. I'm sorry. No conditions. The only condition is that he has to wipe on the entire cast. Make sense? Yes? If I do what? You still have wudu, but you need to get rid of the najas. Okay? So najas does not affect wudu. Najas, just you cannot pray with najas on you. Okay? So if the najas comes on the socks, I need to get rid of this najas. And if I cannot get rid of the najas, except by taking off my socks, I must take off the socks and I must repeat my wudu. Cannot have? If the holes are above the ankle, then this is fine. If they are under the ankle, then they should not be there. Yes, they should not be used. Yes? If I'm still wearing the khuff, then yes. So if I made full wudu and I wash my feet, then I put on the khuff, and then I use the washroom, for example, but I'm still wearing the khuff. I can wipe on the khuff. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, please don't ask ridiculous questions. Come on. Okay, let's move on, inshallah. So we'll move on, pick up where we left off in the seerah. So last week we were talking about the different tactics that Quraysh were using against the Muslims. So we mentioned first they went to Abu Talib. Abu Talib didn't work out. So then they started doing certain things from their own perspective. So they started doing things like insulting Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, accusing him of being a poet, of being a magician, of being a fortune teller, making fun of him and making fun of the message. And they would do this in front of the Muslims so that they can demoralize the Muslims and make them feel humiliated. They would also insult the Muslims and they would bother the Muslims as well. And they would also insult the Quran and they would accuse the Quran of being different, a book that is written by a human being. They would accuse it of being ancient tales, fairy tales, basically. So they had several different kinds of verbal tactics that they used against the Muslims. However, the Quraysh realized that this was not really working. Look, the Muslims are still there. The Prophet ﷺ is still there. He is still preaching the message of Islam. Some people are still going and accepting Islam. So we feel like we didn't have any results. So after the 4th year of the dawah, it is mentioned in the books of Seerah that the leaders of Quraysh got together in a meeting. Boys and girls, can we please sit down because I feel like there's so much movement going on. What's going on? So the leaders of Quraysh sat together, and as mentioned, around 25 of them sat together once in a meeting, and their leader was Abu Lahab, the uncle of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And they basically said, after a long discussion and negotiation, they decided to up the notch a little bit. Not just a little bit, by a lot, in fact. And they decided we are going to now take more severe and more extreme actions against the Muslims. And that is now by resorting to physical violence and abuse and torturing. But it depends on the person. Because you see, in Quraysh, and I think I previously mentioned this before, in Quraysh, every person is protected depending on their status in Quraysh. So for example, someone like Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he has a very, very noble lineage. He's the grandson of Abdul Muttalib. He has his uncle Abu Talib protecting him. So people overall could not harm Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Whereas, and the same thing for like people with noble lineage, people like Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, people like Ali bin Abi Talib, people like, all of these Sahaba who come, like Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, who come from like a very high and a very honorable families, those people would be protected and people would not bother them. So well, not bother them, they would still be bothered, but they would use verbal insults and curses. And the one who's leading all of these insults and tactics is none other than Abu Jahl, one of the biggest enemies of Islam. Abu Jahl, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ actually called him, he is the Fir'aun of the Ummah. The Fir'aun, you know the same Fir'aun in the Quran? If the Ummah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had a Fir'aun, it's Abu Jahl. And so whenever he dealt with a noble person, he would use vulgar language and insults and humiliation. If this Muslim was a businessman, then the Quraysh would boycott their business. They would not buy from them anything. They would not sell anything from them, just to cause them to lose money. The people, however, who had it the worst out of all the people were the weaker class of people. Those are the slave classes, the slave class. Continue after that then. No. So the people, the group that had it the worst out of all the Muslims were the weaker class, which is the slave class essentially. And those people were rounded up and they were beat up and they were tortured very severely. Now, in terms of the noblemen, the public from Quraysh did not bother them, or they would insult them, but they would not beat them. However, their own families is a different story. And we in fact have incidents. Uthman ibn Affan, for example, Uthman ibn Affan, he's an elite nobleman. He has a very high lineage in Quraysh. So Quraysh did not harm him physically, but his family did. And it is mentioned that his own uncle took him and he wrapped him around the hasir, al-hasir, which is like a fiber mat, and he would light a fire under him just so that he can punish and torture him, just purely for being a Muslim. Mus'ab ibn Umair, radiallahu anhu, he was one of the, you can say, he was even a spoiled Sahabi. He lived with a very wealthy family, and he had everything that he wanted, and food and drink. As soon as his mother found out that he converted to Islam, his mother disowned him, and she kicked him out of the house, and she refused to give him any food and any drink until this young man who was young and healthy became very, very skinny to the point when even Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would look at Mus'ab ibn Umair, he would feel sad and tears would come out of his eyes because he would be so upset at what he is seeing. However, these are the noblemen. Despite this treatment, these guys had the better treatment, all things considered. And you have the slaves who were rounded up and tortured. Most of the slaves, they would be taken, they would put iron armor on top of them, and they would throw them under the heat of the sun in the desert so that they can basically boil inside this armor under the heat of the sun. And you can imagine how hot the sun under the desert must be. And they would leave them for the whole day. And they would come to them and say, do you believe in Allah? Do you believe in Al-Uzza, which are the idols? And they would not stop the punishment unless they said, yes, they are my gods. If they said yes, they would stop the punishment. And so we are told in the narration that many of the slaves, in fact, they gave up and they said what the Quraysh wanted them to say, all except one man. One man who never even gave Quraysh the pleasure of a single word. And that is Bilal ibn Rabah radiyallahu anhu. Bilal ibn Rabah was one of his stories, one of the most famous stories, and he was one of the most tortured slaves out of all the slaves in Mecca. Bilal, his master was someone called Umayyah bin Khalaf. He was one of the biggest enemies of Islam. Umayyah would actually take part in beating up his own slave, which is a very ridiculous thing if you think about it. Because unlike what they show you in the social studies books that, masters are whipping and beating the slaves, back in the day, slaves were a very expensive property. Like when your car doesn't work properly, you just grab a stick and start beating it. Like, hey, start working. Or if your computer doesn't work the way that you want to do, you start just beating it up. It doesn't make sense because this thing is expensive. You want it to last for as long as and work for as long as possible. The same thing applies for a slave. So Umayyah he had so much evil and hate within him that he personally participated in beating up Bilal. And he would take Bilal in the morning and throw him under the desert, and he would put a big rock on him. And this is a desert rock, very, very hot under the heat of the sun. And other Sahabas would later comment and say, these rocks were so hot that if you were to bring raw meat and put them on the rock, eventually this meat would get cooked from how hot these rocks were. And Bilal would be left underneath there from morning until evening. And Umayyah, his master, would come to him at the end of the day and would say, what about now? Is Allah your God? Is Al-Uzza your God? And Bilal would not give him a single word, and rather he would say, Ahadun Ahad, Ahadun Ahad, meaning Allah is one, Allah is one. His master would then hand him to the gangs and the ruffians, the gangsters of Mecca, and they would tie a rope on the neck of Bilal, and they would run around the streets of Mecca while dragging Bilal in the streets, all while he is screaming on the top of his lungs, Ahadun Ahad, Ahadun Ahad. And he did not give them a single word. You see, Bilal, he was a slave, and he never thought that his life was worth anything in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. And what Islam came to give Bilal meant to him more than his own life. So he did not budge at all, and this really irritated and bothered the Quraysh, especially his master Umayyah bin Khalaf. Until one day, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq walked by, and he saw Umayyah bin Khalaf beating and whipping Bilal underneath this rock. And so Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he went to Umayyah and he told him, don't you fear Allah in how you are treating this slave of yours? For how long are you going to keep punishing and whipping him in this manner? And so Umayyah turns to Abu Bakr and he says, this is your fault. You are the ones who made him become like this. Therefore, why don't you go ahead and save him? And so Abu Bakr said, I will buy him from you. And so literally, as Bilal is being tortured under the rock, Abu Bakr purchases Bilal as a slave. And it is mentioned as for a price of like basically 5 gold coins or something. And Umayyah, he made fun of this and he said, "Oh Abu Bakr, if you had asked me to purchase Bilal for 1 coin, I would have given him to you in 1 coin, for 1 coin." And in response to this, Abu Bakr said, "If you were to sell Bilal for 100 coins, I would have bought him for 100 coins." And so he took Bilal, and of course he freed him. He was not a slave anymore, and that was when the torture of Bilal was stopped. Of the stories of the slaves that got tortured is Khabbab ibn al-Arat radiyallahu anhu. Khabbab was a blacksmith. You guys know what a blacksmith is? Someone who makes swords and shields and armor, right? Like they have this furnace, this big furnace. You see them in these old movies, right? Like they're hammering swords and things like this. So Khabbab was one of these people, and that's why his master, her name was Anmar, she bought him because he was good at these things. But one day, she heard that he had accepted Islam. So she hired a bunch of men to essentially go and beat up Khabbab once they had found out. As soon as he said, "I am a Muslim and I believe in the religion of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam," they grabbed him, they beat him up, they grabbed whatever tools they found in the shop, and you can imagine what kind of tools they have, and they started beating him so much until he bled and he became unconscious. And you can imagine there's a furnace in the shop. It is mentioned that sometimes they would take burning hot coal and they would place it on his back and they would punish him with these rocks. And it is mentioned that sometimes his own master, Anmar, she would pass by the shop and she would take like a piece of metal that has just been in the furnace, and she would take it and she would put it on the back of Khabbab and on his head, and she would basically like burn him until he would fall unconscious. Until one day it is mentioned that Anmar, she became afflicted with an unknown disease. They didn't know what this disease was, where she basically felt a very, very severe headache. And she couldn't get rid of this headache, and she was yelling from all the pain. And so when the doctors of Quraysh came and they checked her up, they said, "We don't know what's wrong with her, but we think that her treatment, that she can get treated if we burn her back and her head." SubhanAllah. Just as you do, it comes back to you. And so the doctors of Quraysh, they burned the back of Anmar and the head of Anmar. She was unable to withstand the fire, and she had, and then she passed away. Of the stories of the slaves, and there's way many stories, of course, I'm just mentioning it, the famous ones, is the story of Ammar ibn Yasir radiyallahu anhu. Ammar's case was a very special case because he was not tortured by himself. Him and his family were being tortured together. And trust me, there is nothing more painful than a son or a daughter to be tortured in front of their own parents, or for a parent to be tortured and punished in front of their own son. So they were tortured together in this manner. And the culprit behind this torturing was, again, none other than Abu Jahl. He was the one who tortured them in this manner. And so he would take them out to the desert and he would beat them up and he would torture them. And Ammar ibn Yasir is only a 14-year-old, 15-year-old. He's seeing all of this. Until his father could no longer take it, and his father passed away from all the torturing. So when his father passed away, his mother Sumayya, his father, his name is Yasir, his mother's name is Sumayya, she was so angry and irritated at Abu Jahl that she rebuked him. And she basically said that, "I'm not going to say what you want me to say." And so Abu Jahl, he took his spear and he killed Sumayya radiallahu anha in a very disgusting manner, right in front of Ammar. And then he turns to Ammar ibn Yasir and he tells him, "What about you?" basically. And Ammar at this point had already seen too much. And so Ammar, he gave up. And he said the words that Abu Jahl wanted him to say. And so Abu Jahl let him go. Once he was let go, as soon as he was let go, Ammar runs back. Boys, we are talking about the Sahaba here. If you're not interested, please leave the room. This is the least you can do. Okay? So Ammar ibn Yasir, after facing and seeing so much, he ran back to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, And again, imagine for a second, this is a man who just saw his own mother and father getting killed in front of his own eyes. The first thing that comes to his head as he talks to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, I just said words of kufr. What do I do? Subhanallah. Like his own mom and dad just got killed, and he is worried about the word that he just said. Wallahi, what kind of iman do these people have? And so Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells him, how do you find yourself? How do you find your heart? Do you still find Islam in your heart? Ammar says, yes, I still have Islam in my heart. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells Ammar, if they come back to you again, then say whatever you said again. And Allah reveals a verse in the Quran that whoever disbelieves in Allah will have a very painful punishment, except for someone who was forced against their own will to disbelieve in Allah, as long as their heart are firm within Islam. So basically today, if someone, for whatever reason, you're walking in the street and someone takes a gun and points it to your head and either say that you're a kafir or I'm going to shoot you. Allah is saying you can say that you're a kafir. You're allowed to say this, as long as your heart is genuinely firm in Islam. So these are all stories of the Sahaba and stories of, again, there's many stories to be mentioned, but the point here is the Muslims began facing one of the most difficult times of their entire lives. Now, what about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Did he also get tortured and harmed? This is inshallah what we'll talk about next week. Are there any questions before we wrap up? Yes.
So what if there's actually Islam in your heart, and then somebody points a sword at you or a gun at you, and you say you're a kafir, but you're just tricking them that you're actually a Muslim?
Well, that's exactly what you're doing. So that's what exactly I just said. Yes? Abu Jahl never accepted Islam. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to the questions. So if a person made wudu and then he put on his socks, and then later in the day, okay, later in the day he probably broke his wudu and then he made wudu again and wiped on his socks. Then before prayer he took off his socks. Is this wudu valid or not? Yes? Are you sure? Try again. It's not valid. Very good. The wudu is not valid, because if a person wipes on socks and then he takes them off, then this invalidates your wudu. Everybody understands this? Okay. A person goes to play soccer and they wear socks that go below the ankle, and then he wipes on his socks when making wudu. Is his wudu valid? Yahya. Why? Very good. So the socks must cover the ankles and everything below, otherwise you have to take off the socks and wash the feet. A person who attended Islam 101, they learned that it is permissible to wipe on a turban. So he is like, Alhamdulillah, he puts on, he comes to school wearing his cap and he decides to wipe on his cap. Is this allowed? Yes. Yep. It has to be turban. It has to be a turban. A person just had surgery on his arm and he was told by the doctor, don't take your bandage off until you are told to do so. Is he allowed to wipe on this bandage? Yes, on the pillar over there? Yes, why? Exactly. Yes, he is allowed so, because the doctor just told him, don't take it off, otherwise you're going to get injured. So he is allowed to wipe on this bandage until it is healed up. How did the Quraysh decide to abuse the Muslims? Yes. Yep. Very good. So if they were noblemen, they would verbally insult them. Businessmen, they would boycott them. And slaves, they would physically torture them. How did the torture of Bilal ibn Rabah end? Yes, Ibrahim. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq bought him and freed him. How was Khabbab ibn al-Arat tortured? Girls. Yes, Eva? So he would be tortured with fire and with burning objects. Is one of the most severe torturings ever, and he was also beaten up. What did Prophet Muhammad ﷺ say about someone who is forced to say words of kufr? Abu Bakr. Very good. As long as a person, his heart is still firm upon Islam, then they are allowed to say these words. And with that said, we reach the end of the lecture. Jazakallah khairan. We'll share the homework questions in the group chat. If you are not receiving the homework questions and you would like to do the challenges, please let us know and we'll add you to the